Okay, fifth grade peeps, this is part one of our Unit 2 review, and I'm going to talk a little bit about place value stuff. You should have your Unit 2 review thingy bobber in front of you, and paper, and your thinky thinker brain ready to go. Let's talk about item 4. Which asks, how can you use the properties to add 2 and 4 tenths, 5 and 7 tenths, and 2 and 6 tenths mentally? So the properties have been a big thing we've talked about: commutative, associative, and distributive. Now the two properties that might be useful to us here would be commutative and associative. Remember, commutative just means when I'm adding numbers, I can add them in any order I want. I can move them around to make it easier. And associative means that I can group them any way I want to add to make it easier to add. And when we talk about easier, a lot of times we're talking about, if I group them, can I get to a tens base number? So when I look at 2 and 4 tenths, 5 and 7 tenths, 2 and 6 tenths, I'm looking at the tenths and thinking, can I get 10 tenths? Can I get 1 really quickly? Because that's mental math. And I'm thinking, okay, if I think commutative property, I'm going to mentally reorganize and put 2 and 4 tenths and 2 and 6 tenths at the beginning of this. And then associative, that's how I'm going to start. Why? Because 6 tenths and 4 tenths equals 1 whole. And then I've just got to add the other 2 here, right? Mental math. 2 plus 2 plus 1. We are in the zone there. And then I've just got to put another 5 and 7 tenths on that. Well, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus 5 is 10. Plus 7 tenths means I get to 10 and 7 tenths. Without having to do any carrying or regrouping or any of that business that I might have previously had to do before I knew these amazing properties. Now let's take a look at writing numbers in different forms. Expanded form is probably one of the trickier ones. When we look at the number 98 and 704 thousandths, we've been asked to write it in expanded form using powers of 10. First, I'm going to write it in expanded form because that's the one that I've asked you guys to focus on. Then we can look at powers of 10. Remember, with expanded form, we're just breaking this number apart and looking at and writing down the value of each digit. So if I start with the greatest value, that 9 is in the tens place, which means it's worth 9 tenths or 90. Then I'm going to move to the next place. I see the 8's in the ones place. 8 ones is just 8. Here's where things get different. Here's the 5th grade part. Now I look at the 7. The 7 is in the tenths place. That means it's worth 7 tenths. Well, how do I write 7 tenths in decimal? That's it. I see there's a 0 in the hundredths place, so I don't need to put anything down for that. It doesn't have a specific value. I move on to the thousandths. There's a 4 in the thousandths place, which means it's worth 4 thousandths. How do I write 4 thousandths? 4 goes in the thousandths place. Remember, you can always whip up a quick little place value chart for yourself where you can see each of those values to keep all that straight if it's helpful to you. Okay, now we'll go on to powers of 10. Again, I'm not all stressed out about you getting this, but do what you can. So if we could even use expanded form for this. If we look again, still expanded form, we're breaking it apart, but now we're pulling out the factors of 10. So 9 is in the tens place. It's worth 90, which means it's worth 9 tens. 9 groups of 10. There you go. The 8's in the ones place. That means it's worth 8 groups of 1. And here is where we get into the 5th grade part. The 7 is in the tenths place, which means it's 7 groups of 1/10. And there's nothing in the hundredths place, so again we don't have to really be concerned with that. The 4 is in the thousandths place, so we have 4 groups of 1,000th. And really, whether you look at expanded form or expanded form using powers of 10, the values are what we're focusing on in expanded form. We're showing the value of each place. Again, item 9 goes back to this powers of 10 expanded form thing, and now we're looking at it in reverse order. This might be where making a quick place value chart might be super useful for some of us. And I see I'm going to have a tens number all the way to a thousandths number. So I'm going to make a chart with tens and ones. I always make a little spot for my decimal. I'm going to have tenths. Maybe I'm going to have hundredths. I know I'm going all the way to the thousandths. And this chart might just help me keep on track with placing each value correctly. So let's take a look one expression at a time. So this first expression says 4 groups of 10. That's worth 40. It also means the 4 is going to go in the tens place. The next expression is 5 groups of 1. That 1 tells me that we have 5 in the ones place. I get to keep my decimal because I see my next expression is 9 groups of 1/100th. 1/100th. So look at that place value chart. Where is my 9 going to land? It's not 9 groups of tenths. It's 9 groups of hundredths. So it's going to land in the hundredths place. Ha! This is where the place value chart helps us. And what does that mean about tenths? I know you know this already. If there are no tenths in the number, we use a 0 as a placeholder to indicate no tenths here. Finally, we've got 3 groups of 1,000ths. 3 1,000ths. That means there's a 3 in the thousandths place. So I double check each part and I see that standard form for this number is going to be 45 and 95 thousandths. All right, last part of part 1. If we take a look at item 14, this is where we're comparing. Remember, where we're looking at greater than, less than, or equal to. Here we have 2 numbers, 1 and 900ths and 1 and 90 thousandths. Now, if we're not immediately sure, remember the strategy we've been using is the same one that you learned when you were little whippersnappers to compare whole numbers. You line up those numbers by place value, the way you might for addition or subtraction, and then you take a closer look at each place value. So if we look at the ones place, we see they are equal. They are each have a value of 1. We move to the tenths place, the next greater place, and they each have a value of 0. So far, they are equal, or equivalent at least. We go to the hundredths place, and here, 900ths, again, we see equivalents. And the thousandth place, there's a 0 in that second number, and we don't have anything in the first, although we can think in terms of, hey, if I put a placeholder there, either way, each value is equal. Now, if we drew this out, one would be drawn in hundredths, and one would be drawn in teeny tiny thousandths. But the same amount, the same value would be seen in each drawing. So what does that mean? It means these numbers are equivalent. Not 1 and 9 hundredths is equivalent to 1 and 90 thousandths. All right. I hope this helps. Continue on to the second video, and we'll see something with operations and problem solving.